All right. Hello and welcome to the 45th Radical Poetry Reading. I'm Malva Kajali, Special Projects Associate here at The Rail, and today I have the pleasure of welcoming poet, music journalist, and my kindred comrade in arms, I.S. Jones, to the Zoom stage. She's curated a fantastic lineup of poets and immigrant daughters for us today, featuring Camonghne Felix, Patrycja Humienik, and Gaia Rajan, who are tuning in today disparately from Madison, Wisconsin, outside of Cincinnati and Seattle, as well as everywhere else. And finally, we've started out all of our events here with two important acknowledgements. The first is that here in New York, we're on Lenapehoking, the unceded land and waters of the Wappinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and the Shinnecock Indian Nation. The second is an acknowledgement that Black Lives Matter. And I think it's worth taking a moment to remember that the heart of both of these acknowledgements is a commitment to the liberation of the oppressed and solidarity for all those who struggle for freedom, in recognition of the fact that when it comes to liberation, our histories never unfold in isolation. In that spirit, I encourage you all to check out the chat for a living document of resources and actions we've been putting together here at The Rail, and I'm dropping that right now. Oh, I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. But now it's my honor to welcome our wonderful curator of this lunchtime. For years, I kept a blue Post-it note above my writing desk with a line from the poet and friend Itiola Jones. The line is, "The ocean grants safe passage at a cost," which I feel so perfectly captures the grace with which she sums up such small and crucial truths about how we circulate and are dispersed across the globe in the ambient of the world. Itiola Jones is a poet who's cultivated the art of mystique, practicing deep rigor, always graceful, so competent as to have made it an artistic practice and a testament to what it means to be in community, to be in fellowship with your friends in spite of distance. She's a queer American Nigerian poet and music journalist. She's also a graduate fellow with the Watering Hole and holds fellowships from Callaloo, BOAAT Writers Retreat, and Brooklyn Poets. Each April, she hosts a month-long workshop called The Singing Bullet, which I definitely recommend. And when she's not doing that, she's an editor at 2035 Africa and Anthology of Contemporary Poetry. Her works have appeared or are forthcoming in basically every publication you want to read: Guernica, Washington Square Review, Hayden's Ferry Review, Hobart, The Rumpus, The Offing, Shade Literary Arts, and elsewhere. And take note, her chapbook, Spells of My Name, is forthcoming in just a few months with Newfound Press. So keep a close eye on that. And Itiola, so lovely to have you. Take it away.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I see so many faces that I love, that I adore, that I hold close in the audience. I'm so grateful to share this with you all. When Malvika approached me to put together a reading, it was really important for me to bring together my fellow immigrant daughters, for I think that our stories are really important, especially for us firstborns who have had to shoulder a lot of different kinds of weights, different kinds of lives, how we've had to be both mothers and fathers and third parents, and a lot of our lived experiences affect the way that we move through the world, affect the way that we nurture, affect the way that we negotiate love. And it was really important for me to bring us all together. I'm going to open now with a poem by one of my favorite immigrant daughters, Araceli Skirmay, from her latest book, The Black Maria. And I really wanted to read this poem about sisterhood because I feel this is a lot about a community of sisterhood that we're bringing together today. Moon for Aisha. For Camilla Aisha Moon, with a line after Cornelius Eady's gratitude. Dear Aisha, I mean to be writing you a birthday letter, though it's not September, the winter already nearing, the bareness of trees, their weightlessness, their gestures, grace or grief. The windows of buildings all shining early, lit with light, and I am only 10, and riding all of my horses home, still sisterless, wanting sisters. You do not know me yet. In fact, we are years away from that life, but I am thankful for some inexplicable thing. Let's call it freedom or night, the terror and glee of being outside late, after dark, My mother's voice shouting for me beneath stars, which I learned in school are suddenly not so different from the small salt of fathers. Gratitude for that and for the red house of your mother's blood. And then you, all nearly grown, all long legged laughter, already knowing all the songs and all the dances, and not my friend yet, but somehow out there. In one version of our lives, it is November. Through a window, I see one of our elders, a black eye of a woman, is a thinker and is magnificent. At a desk, she builds her house with her hands, with paper, wood, and clay, the years of light and the years of dark. She sees oblivion and turns, crowns her head instead with flowers, the upper and lower worlds. Lightning streaks the black mind of her hair. She leaves it there, then cleans the house with laughter, dances broadly in each room, a pirouette, a whoop. Out of doors, she dares to wear the house from a silver hoop, recalling the moon, the gleaming syllable of a dark planet with fires and time. She is glorious, isn't she? It's always her birthday. She had always lived to tell a part of the story of the world, what happened there. If not a moon, what can we bring to this woman who walks ahead, for whom you were named, and whose name has been added to you, whose language crowns the dark field of what has been hushed, of what is black and blue and beautiful? With that, y'all, I'm nervous. I have not been nervous for reading in so long. This is like very just tender to me. I wrote little intros for everybody in lieu of reading the more formal, polished introductions. When I think of Gaia, I think of the future. I think of what is infinitely possible. She is a person who thinks deeply about the world. She is careful with language, sharp, unflinching, and direct. One of the first poems of hers I had the pleasure of being swept up in is Time Travel Taught Me Nothing, in which she says, because a girl who loves like we do is a spell away from vanishing. I know the future of the written word is good in her careful and deliberate hands. Please give it up for your homes, Gaia Rajan.
Okay, I'm literally about to cry. Thank you so much, IS. And that was so generous, and I'm just so happy to be here. And honestly, also super nervous to be reading with some of my heroes. So I'm going to ground myself with a poem by one of my favorite writers, Samhita Chakraborty. And this is called The B-Sides of the Golden Records, Track 5, Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. And in case you didn't know, the Golden Records are an archive sent to space in case of alien life forms to tell us, what humans really are. So here it is. Before you begin, please be aware that this track does not end. Find a large, unframed mirror, or if you don't have mirrors, find something like one, smooth, flat, and reflective, with superstitions silvered in. Beat it with the most vulnerable part of your body. If you are having trouble deciding what to use, ask yourself, what would you least want me to touch? Continue until the mirror breaks. Then continue until it breaks many times. Continue until you can tell your body part is badly hurt. Keep going. When you regain consciousness, resume. On the 6th day, stop. Search for the brightest, clearest light you can imagine. The light should feel at first welcome and joyous. Then, as you realize it is slightly more garish than you would like, and moreover that it never fades, it riddles your body with a ringing. Carry each fragment, shard, and piece into this light. Do not clean the parts. Arrange them into a shape resembling the original shape of the mirror. If you are not already naked, become naked now. Lie on the fragments. Try not to add more injuries to your body. Feel the light reflect into heat. As you blister, consider the way that on Earth, every night, in the absence of sunlight, tree branches move up and down so that the water inside of the trees keeps moving, creating a kind of heartbeat that is surer than any you will ever know. And that's the end of that wonderful poem, again, by Samhita Chakraborty. So yeah, love her. And the next poem is my favorite poem I've ever written, I think. And it's called Etiology. So this is after Essie Stone. My folks say hoping's good, but it'll never save you, because in our Ohio, the most you'll get is broke televangelists and ravenous churches. My folks are bootstrap royalty. Crisp and cuffed shirts and gold wedding rings that flash on a backhand slap. I was a prodigal daughter and then a prodigy, the child mothers prayed for, spelling bee champ, good at silence. In town they say we don't deserve our breath, but we call ourselves holy anyway because even gods have short memories. All my friends are bored waitress girls who fold tips in their skirts like scriptures and touch smudged lipstick at the altar of convenience store bathrooms. Everything is bright, too bright. Guiltless priest, man and knife, homicidal telephone. Like all good disciples, we are grateful for our unmaking. The billboards say unbelievers will be taken first. Our faces crumpled like hotel Bibles. I say we'll be taken shining. I don't let things be faded in poems. My folks believe in lotteries, not failures. The opposite of dead is exemplary. They believe this every time they abandon me kneeling at the altar of their quiet, their model, their myth. My folks know all that is holy is only a failure of distance. White man, far enough from visible, turns to God. Sometimes when people say I'm killing it, I remember everything exemplary I know or ever will traces back to a small girl on the floor praying, please, please, can you save me? Yeah. So this next poem is kind of a new one, and it's about the myth of the perfect child prodigy. So when I turned 13, I actually cried because I had aged out of the official criteria to be a prodigy. And as I've gotten older, I've seen exactly how exploitative the very capitalist notion of, the pre-professional young child really is. And this is also about one of my friends back when I used to do orchestra. I play the violin. So yeah, this is called Prodigy. I wanted to hate Alice, the ache of it burning in my throat and coming up smarting when she won an audition or booked front page on county news, a profile full of people testifying that yes, we knew her, yes, that girl, she was really something. She was fleeing, which I thought meant going places. She played violin, just like me, alone in that house with the pink floral wallpaper and framed Bible quotes where God preached himself like a sparrow in heat. The miracle here is not that she spun her car into a lake that summer, or that the cops arrived an hour later to proclaim her dead, but that all anyone talked about after was her playing Vivaldi, not smiling. It was almost easier to love her like that. Past tense Alice dancing in clothes she stole from her father, stumbling around the kitchen, some rock number on the radio like the roar of his beat-up Honda, knuckling her down and down into the passenger seat. Her violin knocking in the trunk on the way to a concert. Her father all dime store reverent when she played solo, silent when she finished. The audience rising into prayers for daughters like her. Yeah. And this poem is called Ghost Town, Ohio, and it's forthcoming in the Kenyon Review. Anything can be a spinning tire, or anything can be a dead end speckled with spit, or anything can be a memorial if you look hard enough. So I name this town. The hunger of its dogs, I search for scuff marks on the statues, take them as evidence of the living. Hear the rain against an abandoned roof, and think of the water on my father's hands 10 years ago, his head bent in the sink after a day at the hospital, scrubbing and scrubbing until his skin dissolved. Like him, I enter the horizon and promise to keep quiet. I circle the map where my parents grew up, circle the town begging for someone to reply. I bless the doe sleeping on the road before I see she's full of bullets. I whisper my name in a church and call the echo my ancestor. Angel smacking her lips on the hard syllables. The dogs bark but do not get up to beg. My father gave me the posture of a guillotine, ready always for the war years. I have an accent in almost every language. This town doesn't remember it was once a town. My father on the phone wants to know what I'm looking for. Yeah. Okay, I was not planning on reading this, but suddenly I want to. So I was really obsessed with sonnet crowns for a while. And then I was like, what if we did a guzzle crown? So I wrote a guzzle crown and it took me like 2 months. So yeah, I'm going to read like half of it because I don't think I have time. But yeah, this is called Inheritance. No one lives just once. Get lucky and it'll be a clean break, but usually an earlier self lingers as you claw out from your own sinew. She escapes to the alley on break from the gas station night shift and grasps her name over and over in the dark, or she loses her broken voice, begging at a border, or she sprints home, sure something's chasing her, breaking bamboos like the doe her neighbor shot in the eye. 2 of these a morning. I barely break a sweat. She flinched and I felt the weight on my skin, her breath on my neck. Then the doe broke through the trees again, bristling like she'd never been killed at all. I wanted to say, please break. Please crumple all on your own. I wanted to say, doe, I don't want to kill you. Please, I know how to break. And then, next one. I don't want to kill you. Please, I know how to break my name in 2. I've learned. I am mine, then I am mined for parts. Lightning. I flee past the doe, past the girl turning porous in the field, past the night sky where we whispered mine, 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 because we hadn't ever seen a shaft so bright, so full of diamonds. Then the shadow I stumble into is mine, her head bent back to her hands. She screams. I watch her head bent back to her hands. Sorry, I skipped a line. Okay. I drive to the gas station where they mine bones for neon light. I tell the cashier I like the blue. My mother's grandmother says I'm too young for ghosts, says mine are mostly imagined. In the papers, officials argue that the murders were a regrettable cost. Progress preaches itself again. Memory is about the body, not the past. None of these memories are mine. And then last one. None of these memories are mine. At night, a small child follows me and I can't remember what to ask. Who are your parents? How long since your hands? Do you remember when you're from? I watch her, praying not for God, but for language. Child, I swell, I remember how to touch you, how to be a mother, how to coax a hell to eat. I'm sorry, I said child and meant war. Remember, language is merely a field to walk through. Say sky and look, blue. Say escape and find corridors of people you can't remember you lost. Say ghost and you open yourself to death. A myth and an exorcism are not different things. Remembered in a museum, a creature weeping. Something happened to us, but I can't remember what. I can't remember. Yeah, and there's 4 more, but I don't think I have time. So yeah.
Gaia, you have time.
Okay. Okay, I guess I could read the rest. I don't know. Okay, hold on.
Thank you.
So I scrolled. Okay, here we are. I can't remember. I can't remember anything. The accepted murder of country. Silent. Listen. Can you hear them marching? That means it's time to run. Be silent as a missile, not a mouse. This is your one chance to prove you'd do it different. Bite a handkerchief for silence and smile as you cross Homeland Security. On a good day, I think patriotic fireworks or thunder, but sometimes I'm silent and shaking. My white neighbor jokes that it's a bomb. Can you tell me which decade it is? Standing in the silent village again. Light on the other side of the door. It's all over India, the parade for independence. I watch my mother get silent. Pack a bag with an old newspaper, her mother's knife, a blue dress, watch her cross the ocean and birth me again and drown in silence. Watch her cross the ocean and birth me again and drown in silence. She almost believed we were free. Free, say it again, with feeling. I'm so tired of this body, I want a new one. Don't tell me about ache, you born once again in your ancestors' sludge. Some of us learned to speak in a cemetery or a dark kitchen. Practiced again and again to twist our mouths around our names. Some of us emerge into ghosts so silence, only the silence is left. Again, I learned history. Polished the glass panes of memorial photos so shiny the air blushed. I memorized once again the fact of my skin. My hands could have been my grandmother's or my sister's, but I don't recognize them now. If I pick a new name, a new language, will our ghosts lose their way? Please. Give me something useful to do with my dead. Please, the words shot limp, gone, again. My dead, please, the words shot limp, gone. I'm something grotesque, a swarm of want. I cry on anniversaries and shrink from July 4th, spook like a dog at every explosion. If this is independence, I want to be tethered forever. No one ever taught me how to want a country that wants me dead. The border has my mother's eyes. It wants to rust my body too, to leave me feeling lucky. I don't want to be a grateful corpse. I turn on the tap, scrub at my skin, and watch the water turn red like a wanted poster. Not even my grief is new. I wander through corridors where the dead are everywhere and full of want. Yeah, so I'm just gonna end, but thank you all so much.
Y'all, if you don't give it up for Guy, I'm gonna riot in this. Give it up for Gaia Rajan. That was crazy. What? Ooh, I'm trying to like be polite, but nah, fuck that. Like that was nuts. Wow. My white neighbors are probably angry with me. It's fine. Gaia, wow. I want the full length, no pressure, but my inbox is ready. Also, as a quick aside before I go to Patrycja, you said something before, I think on Twitter or in passing, about how you also wanted to write about the partition. And I know, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, so this is part of a thesis that I was writing in January or February about the hauntology of partition. So basically, partition killed 14 million people, I'm pretty sure, and we still don't actually learn it in schools. And India still has Independence Day every year as if the genocide never happened. So, hauntology is the idea that the ghosts of possible futures continue to haunt us in the present. So I was using that idea from Derrida to, write some academic papers, and also this gazelle crown and, other things.
Cool. When we get into our discussion, I'm definitely going to ask you more about that, but thank you. Yeah, I'm just excited to hear that beautiful work that you're doing. Thank you so much. Patrycja, what do I say? There's so much. I'm going to get through this and not cry. I can do this. There's a curiosity and a yearning that governs so much of Patrycja's work. She moves through the world with an inquisitive eye and open palms, unafraid of not knowing something yet, ever present to learn, to be humbled by a knowing. Patrycja is one of my favorite immigrant daughters, and for me, this reading could not be what it is without her. When I first told her about my passion project to create a safe space for immigrant daughters, her excitement matched my own. And it is a true blessing to have friends who see your vision as clearly as you do. It has been a true honor watching her grow into such a marvelous and daring writer, one who searches and searches and searches. It is my profound pleasure, to introduce you all Patrycja Humanik.
Thank you so much for having me. I am overwhelmed also to see so many beloveds here, and just grateful to be a part of this gorgeous lineup of some poets whose books I have on my shelves. Itiola, thank you so much for organizing this and for your vision. So sweet to see so many sweeties in this Zoom room right now, and thank you to the great team at Brooklyn Rail. I hope to one day meet y'all in person. I'll start it off. I appreciated, Itiola, your invitation to think about lineage and influence, and there are so many poets that I would long to bring to the space, and a lot of deceased poets first came to mind, but I think we live in a time of so many incredible living poets, and I want to read this poem by Aria Aber from her book Hard Damage, a short poem called The First Toast, to ground my readings. So, the first toast. What is it that we owe to each other? I drink to the moment that rises like a calendula flicker behind your eyelids. I drink to the world, still veiled with the words of childhood, our faces warm in history's collateral light. And that's from Hard Damage. So I'll just get into it. I'm working on a book called Anchor Baby, and this is the title poem. Anchor baby. I keep close the intonation of my name, spoken in my mother's voice. There was a time I let people mispronounce it. I don't. Remember the sound of my grandfather's voice. I've lost the word for the flower I could be, impatient blossom, used to never wear lipstick. Now I smear shades of azalea on my lips. I kiss everything. I leave a mark. Invocation, as in a prayer I want to repeat. The physicality of it, prayer, kissing, echoes of a younger me, trying to be approved of. I'm not saying I am better now. I look up how to say anchor in my first language. Once I didn't need to search. Kotvica. My mama gave birth to me a month after my parents arrived in the States. Nie mówiła wtedy po angielsku. It was her first time on a plane. I know nothing of ground, of letting the ship sleep. I fly for hours to visit. If I could bind myself to a place, put cut flowers in a vase, I would thank my mother that way. Instead, I pour the petals out. And then I'll read, love seeing the chat. Wish we were all in a room together, but I like pretending we are. This next poem is called On Devotion. Not the splendor of the dead king's baths, but the peacock's demanding devotion. Is it devotion to pour a glass of water for your lover? Alone in the back of a candlelit mass in English, not the vaulted frescoes of my childhood basilica, mumbled prayers in Polish, lit a candle for my mother's parents who I never met. I had questions for God. Do you renounce imperialism? Winters ago, on the phone, a friend saying, jealousy is good because it is a form of protection. But what if protection is a form of harm? Winter again, snowed in, my lover shoveling flake after flake out my mouth and into the slush pile, a pathway out to where the roads are closed. That it rarely snows where I now live delights and disturbs me, e.g. kiwis ripening in early December. The Midwestern Polish priest, a family friend, sends vaccine conspiracy theory videos via WhatsApp. Along the fence, strung lights remind me of snow, where white camellias grow instead. That I want to see every body of water, lava, lands I don't know the name for, the Red Sea. Isn't it enough to have seen flamingos, pink with feeding in the salt flats in the driest desert in the world? Sometimes I think of God while washing my feet. I think of where I have not walked, my longing to go further. I will read a couple more poems, and I just want to say I'm so grateful to be part of this lineup and such admiration for so many of the poets both reading today and in this Zoom room. So thank you. I'll read I Can't See My Insides. Oh, it's my husky voice. Yeah, I'm like sore throat today, but I guess it's working for me. So I can't see my insides. The parts of me men don't speak of, she looked at longest. Eyes hushed in study, room of rapt breath. How could I speak? Being taken in with an attention for making movies. I pretend to make a movie out of my morning as I abandon the bed. Flicker of muscle and running, the light-sensitive emulsion of dreams cut. There is a scene in which I betray myself, looking directly into the camera saying, I chose this. Outside, a man looks at me too long before walking away on the petal-slick sidewalk. I'm relieved. These petals have let go, are pink simply, ferrying to my eyes their pigment in little baskets, untether me from explaining myself. Wanting and not having could make a ghost. Promise I won't. The blood rushes vein to vein, heart in my ear, galloping. I found a lover and we left the city. Temporarily. Crackle of the fire said as much. Temple into the sprawl of limbs which came later. First, the alchemists. Oysters we ate quietly as we could, laughing, not saying a word, eyes full of language. And it wasn't that no one had ever touched me before, but it had never been like this. Tunnelless. Not a search for a prize, zippered pearl to coax out of grieving, not the scarcity of hardship or the dismissal of it, but we did look up, airglow, sky a cicatrix, purpling, paler, damage and the need to undo it, not to fix, but to unribbon the past. My mama grew up in a rural place, rolling hills of jade. My name betrayed her wish to leave that lack. Szlachetnie urodzona, desire for wealth and its associated ease. I don't blame her for using a name like a tool for weeding. I too prune and tug at my story, but she wanted me to live up to my name, and for that I might blame her. I learn other names, plants that please me. Forsythia, hyacinth, pyracantha, my lover gives me a dry bouquet. I prefer weeping, willow, even seaweed, something of water. I want not to say this, but to be understood with my eyes the way I was for a moment by the fire. But some lovers are not for lasting, though that part comes later, if I, must I, tell the truth. And I have one last short poem for you all. And I'm still thinking about Gaia's reading. That was so incredible. I can't wait for your book. Okay. Acid reflux. Did it make a home inside your chest? What is the softest thing you've ever held hostage? At what age did you first hide your truest feeling? What feeling then eclipsed the truer one? Who did you blame? Thank you.
Wow, Patrycja, that was incredible. Everyone give it up for Patrycja. That was, wow, my heart, my spirit, like my heart is just like reset. Oh, goodness gracious. That was so good. Ooh-wee. Ooh, y'all, this is a good ass reading. Camonghne Felix, right? I mean, Camonghne is a bad bitch. What can I say? I need to get that out there, right? Like, Camonghne, you've been a bad bitch your whole life. How does it feel to be one of God's favorites? She's a bad bitch. She's humble as hell. And I say this as someone who's had the pleasure of working with her in a professional setting. She is extremely humble because she has so much to brag about. But she keeps her head down and she gets the work done. She is fiercely loving, fiercely lovable, and passionate. She is consistently stretching the limits of language in strange and delightful ways. She is the first of her name in many ways, but also the first in her own aesthetic. She's creating her own linguistic lineage. I have so much reverence and admiration for Camonghne. She's already too fly for the rest of us, and the crazy part is that she's only just begun. Please make some noise for the one and only Camonghne Felix.
Oh, thank you, Tiola. Thank you, thank you. Wow, 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 wow. Your beautiful face and all of the love and the sweetie pie-ness in this reading. Lots of friends here. I want to give a couple of shout outs. Actually, I'll do that later because I don't want to leave nobody out. Thank you so much, IS, for inviting me. Truly just love you and your work and your curatorial mind so much. You're so special. Thank you to Brooklyn Rail, Patricia and Gaia. It was just so special to hear you read. I love your work and I can't wait to read your books. Yeah, I'm gonna read some poems. And first I wanna start with reading a poem by someone who is like a sister to me. Her name is Yasimin Gyazi. She's an Afghani poet who I went to grad school with. She taught me a lot about what it means to be in, how to sort of carve out interiority as an immigrant daughter and build a world of yourself around yourself. And this poem, I think, does that really well. So I'm gonna start with Yas. This is called Self-Portrait by Yasimin Gyazi. She is everywhere, flies all around, being here askew, sudden as night, old and crooked with drug again, so focused on editing. And those cracks in her chest of a million star depths, as if they were laughing. Today, she wanted to hear what I would say about what happened, if I could listen without cringing as slim as dusk. What new ripple at keel, the presence between nothings, trapped by comparison or structure or sophistication. These bullets buried deeper than logic, than marshes of incidental proximity. She crawls to the edges to ponder, complain, creak. A good voice of emergence, the landscape has changed her. Like gray stone, crudely set in page and air, milky absent air. I tried to compose myself, clamored on a cairn of her own mythology, her oblivion. Not again, her spectral spectrum belted, pale in its ghost nim. But so do all the things doing caveat escape as incrementally as wind and shape syllables. Today, I think the word permeated oil a little, knotted chain. I wait, however, in a completely obscured perspective for the woman blooming out of that poem, Lonely Years, explaining the world. How many times she trods delicate pearls and crushes them with power balanced between brown thighs. She doesn't belong to this far west. Crushing songs, simple nymphs between white sheets of paper, obedient words, obligatory words. But who remembers at this point to nourish potential, to feel strange? I reduce her ungathered rupture to the confinement of complications. She of the romantic and evasive and bored. It doesn't matter if you want the nudging chance of her region. Believe me, this will not pass. Her uncanny knowledge of wind where everything intersects. She sang so it fell down, so cold, so pretty, on which to be naked cast until her 3 jagged graces came. That was by Yasimin Gyazi. And I think I'd like to bring another special poem into the room that's not by me. This is by Sharon Olds. As a firstborn, I often, or as an immigrant daughter, I also think about just what that experience for my mother was like. I've written about it a couple of times, but this poem always reminds me of that particular gaze of the mother looking down at her child as she comes into the world, which I think is special. This is First Birth by Sharon Olds. I had thought so little, really, of her inside me all that time, not breathing, intelligent, maybe curious, her eyes closed. When the vagina opened slowly from within, from the top, my eyes rounded in shock and awe. It was like being entered for the first time, but entered from the inside, the child coming in from the other world. Enormous, stately, she was pressed through the channel. She turned and rose. They held her up by a very small ankle. She dangled indigo and scarlet and spread her arms out in this world. Each thing I did then, I did for the first time, touched the flesh of our flesh, brought the tiny mouth to my breast. She threw the avalanche of milk down off the mountain. I felt as if I was nothing, no one. I was everything to her. I was hers. Cool. So I'm gonna read a couple of my poems, I guess. I'm working on a collection of prose poems called Dyscalculia. So I'm gonna read a prose block, a couple prose blocks from that. And to define Dyscalculia for you, which might be helpful, it is a term referring to a wide range of difficulties with math, including understanding the meanings of numbers and applying mathematical principles to solve problems. Okay. The first time I touched a computer, I can't exactly recall, but in my mind, I can find every single one my mother built, always nearly from scratch, constructing a motherboard memory by memory, the shell of the base warm and humming with the blood of her calculated intellect. When I was little, she would build computers all of the time, either one of my sisters strapped to her chest, her arms bent in a bowl so as not to disturb them, screwing a power connector into a socket with bunny whalers sailing in the background. Once built and functional, she would install the games I liked, adjusting the computer chair so that my eyes would rest at level with the great pixelated sky of the monitor. My mother wanted to be a lot of things: an architect, a computer scientist, a recording artist, and ultimately she became all of those things, a startling combination of the guiding principles inherent to those occupations in one ethic. She studied criminal justice while writing songs with her band, and for a summer after getting her master's, she studied computers and thought to consider a computer science track, then found that neither the master's nor the computer science degree gave her a clear path. And as a first-generation immigrant, there was no precedent yet for following any dream that didn't allow for the possibility of immense, unjust wealth. And so she went to law school, where she realized there was no way to keep a cheating man, buy a home, and put me through private school while maintaining her basic integrity and at the same time making the kind of money she needed to meet immigrant expectations. So she kept the awful man for a while longer, later on chose her integrity and negated all of the above, deciding to spend her intimate time turning computers and machines into an escapist hobby where she could deconstruct and reconstruct broken systems, spooling a cell out of the motherboard with surgical precision, packing a new, better cell back into its cavity like it were her own. I was supposed to have a 4-day limit on the computer, she tried. Sometimes, while she slept, I would creep from her bedroom back into mine to finish an escape with Carmen Sandiego, the bedroom door cracked for early detection of movement, my hands somehow always angled in a perfect distance from the power button in case I caught a shadow dancing. All day, I would think about that empty computer screen and what lay behind it for me, intentionally misbehaving until someone would send me to my room as punishment, where I could sit delighted, fixated, tantalized as the night fell around me, the eclipsing light falling across my cheeks like snow. Slowly, I began to think in the computer's language, its pointer shaping the contours of my dreams. I was dreaming in programs and codes and colors and compounds, dreaming in trapdoors that open with modular keys, dreaming in the voices of my virtual guides, dreaming from behind the wheel of a car powered by good grammar, Mavis Beacon's wily tone lulling me to sleep, singing, "Good job, are you ready for the next lesson?" And I'm gonna go to some poems now and maybe pop back to Dyscalculia. I don't write about my siblings often, which I think is just like, again, like a first daughter kind of orientation. You're like, whatever, like I clean your butts and like make you dinner. I don't need to talk about you. But when I wrote this poem, I realized that my relationship to being a big sister and a first daughter had changed, and it was exciting. So I'll read that poem. It's called Imagine My Sister an Astronaut. When she was small, I couldn't see her. I held her hand in tendered obligation, fed her because she was hungry, slapped her because she spoke. One day she stole my underwear. I climbed to the top of our bunk beds, my waist a cradle over hers, my fists a marsh of dead moons shadowing her little face. After 2 taps, I felt the monstrosity of my putrid desires flatten, my intrinsic knowing suddenly afraid to bruise the small genius, the strange foreign god of sisterhood. It was then I knew I loved her something bad. She's off to college going to study some aerospace, biomedical, nanoscience shit, some shit only white people think to study because access is a frame of reference and organizing principle. In the family group chat, she sweats us out with her excitement about next semester and 8 a.m. trig. In high school, I failed everything, graduated with underwhelming decimals, the dark trauma of men lining my transcript, but baby girl has got something I don't. It's called discipline, and it moves her through the world slow and deliberate, all the night a platform, all the trains just stations away. She's off to space camp in a few weeks and so fucking casual about it. I say, hey, maybe you should be an astronaut. She says, yeah, I'm thinking about it as if it's a breakfast burrito or mommy's oxtail, my inflated boundaries of ambiguous sciences. I think, shit, imagine my sister, an astronaut, lineage narrativized through the brat of my heart into the prodigious stuff of the stars, towering in bigness, bigger than you and you and you and you. I think I have time for one more poem. One thing that I reflect on a lot is, I think a big part of being a daughter, especially immigrant daughter, are all the mothers that you collect over time, all the different people who mother you, both in ways that you enjoy and ways that you don't. And so I wrote this poem about somebody who definitely is a mother figure to me, and has taught me a lot about how to live. So this poem is for her. It's called Born, Living, Will Die. From my favorite auntie, Jeanette. Sometimes I think I'm never going to write a poem again, and then there's a full moon. I miss being in love, but I miss myself most when I'm gone. In the salty, wet air of my ancestry, my auntie peels a mango with her teeth, and I'm no longer writing political poems because there are mangoes, and my favorite memory is still alive. I'm digging for meaning, but haunted by purpose, and it's an insufficient approach. What's the margin of loss on words not spent today? I'm getting older. I'm buying smaller images to travel light. I wake up, I light up, I tidy, and it's all over now. Thank you.
Y'all see what I mean when I said Camonghne is one of God's favorites? If y'all don't wild out for Camonghne Felix right the fuck now, let's go. What? I'm gonna fight the air as soon as this Zoom party is over. All right, y'all. The wonderful, incredible, amazing Ladan was unable to join us. However, I still feel out my heart to call her into the space by reading one of her poems. In a lot of ways, Ladan, well, not in a lot of ways, to me at least, Ladan Osman in a lot of ways is a foremother to the contemporary African poetics movement. I was introduced to her work, if I'm remembering correctly, from the inaugural African poetry chapbook box set. And after that, I was just like, wow, I trust Ladan Osman completely with the written word. None of people get wild out about her work. I'm surprised that people don't like riot in the streets, because that's how good she is, in my opinion, and my opinion is correct. So with that being said, I'm going to read the poem To Able, from her debut collection, The Kitchen Dweller's Testimony, a poem that I feel a lot of kinship with, in part because my debut collection reimagines Cain and Abel as sisters. To Able, sing your song sudden, let it be a car door hitting the breastbone, small tear in the pink of an eye. Who hears it when you keep its hum at the base of your throat? I do. I am the sister who watched a bird bury its dead and did not understand. You said help, imitated help with a howl that caught in your voice box, but the dogs listened for it and called to the ambulances that took you after plans gone confused, you alone on a stretcher or between the cracking lines of a parking spot. Neither of us knows the best prayers, but we can pretend. We can let them strain in the back of our throats as melody. Anyway, go buy her books. Go buy both her books. Like, Ladan Osman will write forever. I don't care what nobody says. Anyway, with that being said, I'm going to read a few poems of my own. I'm going to read some poems from my full-length collection, and then some poems from my chapbook, Spells of My Name, which is coming out later in the year. And I don't want to do too much explaining, but the title of the poem is Husband Child, Etymology of Cain. And the only thing I'll say is that my mom has a pet name for me in Yoruba, which means Okomi. The word Okomi means husband. And I've always found it interesting that many of us immigrant daughters, especially us firstborns, in a lot of ways, we have to be a third parent, a surrogate parent, and often when we were not emotionally ready to take on that sort of responsibility, but it was thrust upon us anyways. Yeah. Husband child, etymology of Cain. First return of spring I could remember. Mama took me out to the landscape, said bury your hands into the soil and listen. So I did. I am daughter and husband, sister and mother. My name means she who creates, crafts, forms. The world I wanted most was one that would bend at will. I didn't understand this as a child when my first narcissus wilted in the heat. It was a law of my home. Because I am older, my sister does as I tell her. Firstborn, third parent, mother of my own haunting lack. Was I ever a child or a surrogate to salvage my parents' union? My hands have come to know the wet dark intimately. My parents only ever touch at night, plea each other's names. My sister calls me perverse, and I say how? Frogs envelope their softness into each other. Wild horses mount their mates to undo an ancient appetite. The soil tells me as much. In my grief, I cursed the narcissus. It said, yes, Lord, then perished at my feet. I know what love is because I know what violence is capable of. Truth is, I have no husband habits. Mother weeps in my lap with her good eye unblackened by Adam's rage. Baba, you gave me dominion to master. You want perfection, yet you want the labor done by human hands. How do I win if there's no pleasing you? Can you speak Yoruba? This is from the chapbook, by the way. I asked my father for the word thief in Yoruba. He says ole. Says it also means lazy. Ask him for rain. He says ojo. That it's the same word for coward. It's been said you begin to master a language when you dream in it. I asked my father if his mother visits his sleep, searching the dark with his face for her hands. Faithful as nightfall, my father doesn't answer. Calls me buruku, a word he won't translate, but I know it is a rebuke by the way it undoes my name. So I slip the word heavy as a shot shell into my mouth. There are other ways to spell silence. A faceless hunter moves towards a black fawn. Snow renames the landscape, but there isn't a word for snow in Yoruba. Language retreats where it isn't felt. A buckshot rings its bells to the sky. A herd of deer scatter the day's remains and are chased by their panic into the night. I asked my father how to say yes in Yoruba. He says Beni, but that it also translates to it is so. The hunter moves as the fawn moves, through the enclosure of trees, taking aim between the eyes, my bleeding skull knighted to the floor. Forgive the tongue that flexes towards what it knows best. Ojo, ojo. I kept saying coward when I meant to say rain. The chapbook is governed by the movement of the chapbook is governed by four prose blocks that are erased. I'm gonna read one of them. Just as a trigger warning, the poem talks about sexual assault. A good portion of the chapbook negotiates sexual assault, but I think this is one of the poems in which it just comes out and says it. Interview with the American Nigerian. Your voice is highly engaging and intense. What is the process of this? We spend our lives running away from or toward the truth. R tried to rape me in my sleep, then punched the truth down my throat. Throat being a wound being another word for father. The dark space my father left behind is a father. The dark space his father left behind is a father. I felt the night's soft meat attempt to enter me. I can't tell you if finish what was started. The hunter still gives chase, a specter splinting through the bramble. From my eyes pocket hunters stream the forest, snow memorizing the game of venery, a black fawn closing the distance between capture and dawn, men trampling the landscape into sirens and dust. I understand now. Some men prefer it this way. The fucking tastes sweeter when it's something they've stolen. For months after, nightmares flooded my eyes. Why do any of us return to that which is promised to slaughter us? I am a Black woman. No one is coming to save me. This story is not about you taking this repulsion from me, but about this yearning which both opened and nearly killed me. What kind of desert was I to believe thirst only had a single tongue? Nigerian men fetishize my accent. Your voice is clean like water. I like your mouth, Oyimbo. It sounds so foreign, nothing like the way we speak. I move towards what is pertinent to my survival. I dig my true name out of the dirt. And I have two more poems. Only thing I'll say about this poem is that it's I wouldn't say it's for my mother. It's about my mother, and it's about the Biafran War, the Nigerian Civil War, that both of my parents were children during when it took place. Self portrait as Etoli. I am a spell of 6 letters. I have a name that begins and ends countries. What could end a country begins a mother. A girl child then she fetched water for home. Home means what you love cannot return the same. Nigeria, her first love, opened by war. War only understands thirst. Soldiers did too. She saw them but couldn't outrun their hands, hands that tore open her mouth, stomped out her face. She mouths to me the word miracle, her lips resisting the dull pull of scarred flesh. Go to Nigeria, and I will bury my eldest daughter. I have a name that begins and ends countries. I am a spell of 6 letters. I have two more, and then I want to kind of close this out with another poem from a different immigrant daughter. How are we doing out there? Everyone good?
I think we're all in awe. You're doing wonderful.
Oh, I'm glad. This is one poem from the full length. Lord willing, I will finish this damn book by the end of summer. We shall see, though. Anyways, we are soft between hours. There's a sweetness to these nights of surrender. It's true. The heart beats 2 rhythms, one for me, then you. I emerge from the shower, drip on mama's good floor, trail a gown of water towards your door. Down the hall, you sleep in your skin. I stretch in mine. I tried before to rest, but my jaw aches from grinding teeth, so I kneel at your altar. I watch you touch yourself through a blade of light leaking into the hallway. Earlier, we went to the river if only to relieve the body of the sun's tirade. I didn't mean to see at first. You slip out of your blue bathing suit, step into the water. Blue promise memorizing the muscles of your back. I'm old enough to understand too much longing can make any creature feral. My problem is that I fall in love with beauty. You are the grape going into my mouth, the lone tear of river water tracing my breast. I've spent my small life as 2 bodies yearning to be one. I want to know how it felt the first time you discovered God's eye blooming between your legs, a flowering of dark red poppies in a field. What pleasure possesses you, sister, I want for myself. In this night, everything is about the moon, even her absence, even you. Eventually, someone wants something. That's the nature of power. O patient light, grant me passage. I want no beast but the night to hear me. Your soft, indelible labor, fingers roving the field until you shudder into a gilded song. I long to kiss the hands of this submission. I dream we crash into each other, Cain Abel, Cain Abel, Cain Abel. But even when you catch me and close the door, I fever for the taste of you. I said I have a problem. I didn't say I wanted to be saved. And this is my last poem, Esperanza, which is for my grandmother. So my name Itiola means the crowned one who fell into wealth. And both of my grandmothers, my paternal and maternal grandmothers, both named me having never met each other. And it's kind of been the mythos of my name that I have learned to live into. Esperanza. Looking back now, I must have misremembered Esperanza to mean wild horsewoman, the word deriving from the Latin sperare, meaning hope. Either way, I could see it. 1,000 grandmothers galloping into dusk. night being the dark horses carrying off the day on their hooves. My grandmother lifts her head in wind bows, shifts her legs in a man's knees buckle, could turn a lover to a drought with a single glance. Now she returns to me as myth, on four legs scattering the wet earth behind her. My grandmother calling my name, which was once hers. How she and my father's mother crowned me in this name, having never met. Two equine women running as I have learned to run. The story goes, her presence would remind men of their mortality, until my grandfather sought to subdue what others could not. I wish I thought to ask, give me a truth I need to survive. She would tell me, don't worship men. What a waste of devotion. It's been said women have nothing of their own, not even what we're named. Call it a moonless clarity. How she passes through me every time the dark unknuckles and the night loosens its blue-black skin for stars. And now I want to close us out with one more poem by Patrycja Humanik. This is my favorite poem to read on my birthday, which is coming up soon. Running Home, I Saw the Planets by Patrycja Humanik from her second collection, Kingdom in Amalia. Running home, I saw the planets. On the way home, going with the hill and mammoth clouds behind me, rushing to the house before the rain, those beautiful Pakistani girls with their faces happy as poppies, I thought, those girls rushing home as I was rushing home to beat the first small pieces of rain falling like nickels in departing lights. There was the laughing of the girls, shrieking gulls, 5 or 6 of them depending on whether I count myself. The bright and shining planets of their dresses lifting just so in the wind, and their black hairs, and the black sound of horses, horses hoofing it home, the click and clop of their patent leather hooves. Still, it touches my ear, this sound. I touch my heart. I can't stop touching my heart and saying, today is my birthday, you see. With the beautiful clamor of planets, girls as dressed as girls who, running home, have heads, whose heads swing black night, running home on the black feet of horses from the rain. Now I understand. Today is my birthday. It is Thursday, my day, my Black day. Thank you all so much for joining us in this Immigrant Daughters reading. Thank you so much to Camonghne. Thank you so much to Ladan. Thank you so much to Patrycja. Thank you so much to Gaia. Thank you so much to Malvika Jolly and the entire Brooklyn Rail team for making all of this possible. I'm so grateful and so honored for all of this. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Itiola, as well. And thank you so much, again, Gaia, Patrycja, Camonghne, everyone. If it's all right with you, I think what we'd like to do is open to a brief crosstalk led by our very own Itiola Jones. And how is everyone feeling? What I might do is I might open up the security settings so that everyone in the audience can kind of unmute at will. We're all friends in the Zoom. So everyone behave. Okay. All right, but I'd love to pass the mic right back to you, Itiola.
Yeah, we can kind of begin. I guess Patrycja, I'll start with you. I already lost track of which poem, but there's a poem that you talked about your mother and flowers, and how you said that your name gave away your mother's. From what I'm remembering, I might be misremembering. Your name gave away your mother's ability to assimilate, something like that. I think one thing all of us have in common is that we all have names that are difficult to pronounce, traditionally non-American names. And I'm so curious about names and namesakes, and how have you all learned to live into your names?
Yeah, I can kick it off and be curious to hear what you all have to say too, including you, Itiola. Patrycja is the Polish version of Patricia, which is as I wrote into one of the poems, is a lot about like nobility. And I come from a family that doesn't come from money at all. And my mom's family in particular struggled with money. And so I've reflected a lot about the sort of desire for me to live the American promise of like me living up to a sort of pull yourself up by the bootstraps person that might like save the family, and the pressure that's so real on immigrant daughters for that. And at the same time, the sound of Patrycja in Polish is really special to me. So I have this tension of like not loving the associations with the name, but then also going 18 years of my life letting people mispronounce it as Patricia when I was younger. And then, you know, moving away and being like, no, it's Patrycja, and just like making people pronounce my name. So a lot of gratitude for the way it sounds to me in Polish, and then a knowing that my mother chose it with this desire that they still haven't fulfilled for their lives, which is to be more financially stable. So I think like many, like many immigrant daughters, there's a lot of layers there. And I'm thinking a lot about what you all said about in your poems too, about the parenting that we do. So names are contested to me also just because of a resistance to being one thing. You know, I think as poets in general, there's such a desire to express the multitudes we contain, and names are narrowing. So I'd be curious to hear that from each of you too.
I can hop in unless y'all. Okay. My namesake. I definitely had to live into my name Itiola because for the first probably like 20 years of my life, I didn't go by my first name. I went by Stephanie, which is my christening name. I'm a part of the Celestial Church of Christ, which is a denomination of Christianity that was founded in Benin and also has satellites in Nigeria as well as parts of around the world, right? So I went by my christening name, Stephanie, for many, many years of my life. And then I don't know, I think when I was moving out of California, I just was like, I don't feel like this name anymore. Like it's still my name. Like most of my family still calls me Stephanie. No one, it's rare. I think if my mom wants to cuss me out, she won't cuss me out because she's a Christian woman, but she'll say my name. She'll say my full name as it appears on my driver's license when she's mad at me. But I got to a point where I no longer felt like this name. And I also had to be honest with myself that I was using my name as a shield, right? Because with a name like Itiola, I can show you all the list of reiterations that I have collected over the years. People are very creative. I think I tried to shield myself from a kind of otherness by denying my heritage, my lineage. And I got to a point where I was just like, I don't want to live like this anymore. It doesn't feel true to who I really am. And so I felt like I was stepping into a new life, a new iteration of myself by becoming Itiola, so to speak. And then when I did that, Christ, my parents fought me. They were like, no, you got to change your name to Stephanie. You can't do this. We're going to put you on terrorist watch list. Because like sometimes people accidentally call me Ayatollah. So, you know, make of that what you will. And I was like, no, this is my name. This is my name. This is my name. This is the name that my grandmother, my father's mother, gave me. And I never got to meet her in my lifetime. It's a family heirloom. It's the only thing I have of hers that is mine. Yeah, it was really important for me to keep this name and kind of keep the lineage of it going. And I think also it makes me feel closer to my father's mother because I never got to meet her in her lifetime. And a lot of people in my family say I look like her and I kind of carry myself like her too, which means a lot. So yeah.
Itiola, that also reminds me so much of Gaia's line from the very beginning, that I whisper my name in a church and I call the echo my ancestor, that there is a kind of like generations and a lineage. See, I was taking notes. But there is a kind of generations, a lineage, a passage to everyone's names that I think takes on extra weight when you add the element of displacement, right? Like when you add the element of, you know, like this question of how do we make palpable unknowingness? How do we make palpable? I feel like what I've been sensing is everyone is writing into themes of like what is not passed on, what evades translation, what is slipping over the sides, the discomforts that come with that history. And, you know, I do think like the importance of naming, like I have a very similar thing, right? Like everyone mispronounces my name. And I frequently have this experience where like all the white people I know will fight to tell other white people that they're mispronouncing my name. And I'm like, well, you're all mispronouncing my name. And I also feel like there's an element of it that's like my grandmother chose my name during a colonial period, right? Like the aesthetics of that moment carry over, right? And that's important, right? But this also makes me think of like so much of, I love what you said, Patrycja, about resistance, right? That Itiola, your poem's self-portrait as every mispronunciation. You know, write yourself into that embodied person of like how everyone is projecting you.
Yeah.
It's fun to create other selves. Oh, sorry, come on, you were saying?
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that it's fun to create imagined other selves, and kind of see what would I have been like in this imagined life or this imagined life or these lives that I quite literally never lived. Yeah, come on, you're about to chime in.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm thinking a lot about just like the function of colonization in naming, especially for immigrant daughters and immigrant women. And my name means two things. So it means roar like fire and wind. And it's also the indigenous name of the island that my family is from, Grenada. What my father likes to say, that was the name pre-Columbus. So my dad was very intentional. Some of you know that my dad participated in the Grenadian Revolution in 1983. And so I only learned this like a little bit more recent. He was very intentional about like picking my mother as like the person that he wanted to procreate with, which like is problematic for a couple of different reasons, whatever. But I also think a lot about the intentionality that he placed behind my name and the fact that I knew early in my life going out into the world that like my name both had like a temporal thing going on where like my name was supposed to exist like before this period of colonization before Columbus, but also that my father wanted me to go through the world with that framework of thought of like, what does it mean to sort of exist both in your language and in your actions as if you could have existed before colonization, right? Like, what does community mean pre-colonization? What does work mean and effort? So yeah, that's a big part of, I often get like really frustrated with my parents because naming is such an intimate act and it does so much in terms of creating the kind of person you're going to be. And I'm like, what if I wanted to like, I don't know, be a pop star? Like you ruined all of my chances at being normal. But I also think a lot about it as like not a trinket, but a time capsule that I hope to pass down in some way, shape, or form, just something that orients my people as existing before whiteness, as existing before the violence of whiteness, and as being like true to a land and true to a location, which is nice.
I can go for like 30 seconds. So for me, Gaia is actually a nickname. My full name is Gayatri, and I love both these names equally for different reasons. So Gayatri is a variant of the traditional Gaia 3 with an H, but the reason it's different is because my parents spent so much time trying out names for best numerological power. So they would literally like write it down. They have notebooks full of this for every single name that they thought out. They would calculate, you know, what it meant numerologically and like, you know, what my future would be based on that name. But for me, that name is not really for white people or for people who don't put in, you know, the time and effort to pronounce it. Yeah, and also Tila said imagined other selves. I remember being like 4 and asking everyone to call me Marsha for no reason, that was like my white girl name, because for some reason misrecognition of my real name felt so much worse to me than recognition by a name that wasn't actually mine.
Woo! Yes, that. Exactly that. Goodness.
Yeah, truly.
I have a
May
question.
I jump in with a question? Oh, go ahead.
Hey, y'all, all these celestial beauties. First of all, I love all y'all. You already know that. Second, I thought it was a really interesting point that Patricia brought up about nobility. And I was really curious, particularly not as an immigrant daughter, but definitely as a first generation daughter and all of that emotional labor. How is this work that you're all in conversation with, but then also producing, how does it shift how you're thinking about nobility minus like the class part of it? And then also too, I think that there's like a very strange sort of intersecting line of trying to fight against like, you know, respectability politics or model minority. And so what does it mean to quote unquote build noble character, not only through the work, but like the way that you move in the world. Because as I see it, the character of all of the, the readers here is everything about telling the truth. And that feels like a very important lineage. So, but I'd be really curious to hear from you all how you see yourselves interrogating that.
Yeah, I can hop in if that's okay with everyone else. I am the big sister to 4 people. And when I was young, I was like hospitalized a lot. I was just often really unwell. And they had the front seat to a lot of that. And as I got older and started to sort of work through whether or not I wanted to have children, like what it meant for me to like reproduce legacy, I thought a lot about them and about what it meant both as a mothering figure, but also as a big sister, as a carrier, to take care of them, especially based on some of the unwellness that they had to experience and see me go through. So now when I think about like nobility and legacy, I think a lot about like, as my sisters and my brother go into the world, especially my sisters in particular, as they go through the world, I want them to have some sort of living example of like what it means to be, I guess, to be culturally generous, right? To be open and honest and critical about the world and their impact. And the only way to do that is to show them through action. And so I don't think that I will ever have children, but I do think that as my sisters and my brother go into the world as young professionals and as artists in their own right, that they'll carry a little bit of that education that I've given them around just like how to take care of each other and about like what that means in terms of finding more community and permuting within that community. Yeah, that's sort of how I think about it. Like, what I just try to show them the best way of being in community as I can. So that's both in taking care of them, but also them seeing the way that I take care of my people politically, socially, culturally, artistically. Yeah, that's kind of all I can think of.
I can hop in on this. I agree with a lot of what Camonghne said. I think me as the eldest daughter, and also as a woman, there is this expectation that eventually I will have to reproduce, as if I don't have a choice. my mom often says to me, "You owe me granddaughters," and I'm like, "No, I owe myself a good life." I think that, but I also feel like it's sort of a generational gift to be able to just say that, because my mom definitely grew up in a time where saying that was not possible. She often would say to me and my siblings that she had us late. She had me when she was 27. And she says late because by the time I was born, most of my cousins were like 14 or 15 years old. There's a picture of my oldest cousin, Rachel. She's holding me behind a church. She's wearing like her sutana. I'm wearing like a baby sutana as well. So like I didn't have the chance to grow up with my cousins because the age gap was so wide. But it feels I guess revolutionary. I don't know if that's really the right use of the word, to be honest, but there's something very beautiful about me being able to say my body is mine, my future is mine, I belong to myself, and I have that choice. Especially now, being able to kind of financially take care of myself in a way that maybe like what 40 60 years ago a woman couldn't do that without a husband or something, without some man that she had to be financially attached to. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question, Erica. As far as nobility, sorry, one more thing. Also, as far as nobility goes, my grandmother, my mother's mother, was a princess in Nigeria. She had tribal scars coming down her face here. She had tattoos all over her face, which is how I justify getting more tattoos. And there's a sort of reverence that comes with that. Especially being like the first of her grandchildren born not on Western African soil. And that's something I also think about as I carry her name as well.
I'll pop in and say I love this question and what has shifted to talking a little bit, Camonghne said about legacy, and what you both have said really resonates with me. And I'm thinking about something that a writer here in Seattle, Anastasia Renee, talks about, like living legacy, and not just like, and I love thinking about that in tandem with, I might be misattributing this, but I think June Jordan said something about like the temporary is sacred, and just thinking about like the actually, not just what comes after as a part of our important legacy, and how many people are living their legacy out right now. And for me, writing is so much about relationship building and in the moment. And so that feels really important to me as someone who has also felt those pressures as a woman and daughter of immigrants to consider motherhood. It's really been helpful for me to think about the legacy right now and all the care that's happening right now, not just, you know, after we pass. So I just wanted to throw that in there too.
I know we have just about 5 minutes left. May I jump in with one question that's like itching at me, if that's all right? So I feel like I'm picking up on a lot of like historical themes, right? That Itiola, you're writing out of the Nigerian Civil War, the Biafra, and then Gaia, you're thinking about like lineages of partition, which, you know, I think about daily. How can you not think about, you know, colonial history, empire, partition, when we land where we are? Everyone has landed where we are because of the flows of power. It seems that many of us are thinking about decolonization, Camonghne, the Grenadian Revolution, your father, your lineage, even like the way your father conceives of history, like by thinking of how to select a wife, you know, which is a kind of project that I think a lot of our families perhaps have done, but it feels like a lot of us are kind of like on a wave of global history. And I'm wondering if we have craft or perspectival shifts on like how perspectives on how to do that. Like how do each of you, I'm so curious to know, what is the logic you're using to like think about that kind of history, or write into or towards in the direction of that kind of history? And then my other question is, you know, on the other side of it, we've all landed in the US empire. What are the things that we do, that you do, all of us that we do that keep us grounded as we do that work?
I can hop on in unless someone has it on their heart to start us off. Okay. So I was apprehensive for a long time to even write about the Biafran War as a Western-born African, because I thought it would be ethically irresponsible. I always had this sort of lingering worry that, am I trying to co-opt a story that is is not directly mine, but also am I trying to romanticize violence through a Western lens? That was something I always like kept in my purview and tried to be careful about that. But then I think about how my father was born in 1955. Nigeria did not become an independent nation until October 1st, 1960. My mom was born in 1963. And if Nigeria was not wrought with, you know, decades upon decades of corrupt government, my parents would not have left Nigeria, and I would not have been born on American soil, and my whole life would probably be different. I would have been Itiola. I would have probably been born in Edo State. My whole existence would be different, right? So I try to write it from that lens about how this chain of events happened that made me into who I am, that made my mother who she is today. In the poem that I read, Self-Portrait as Etzioli, that really happened. My mother was jumped by guerrilla soldiers and left for dead as a child. She has this long scar down her face from when it happened. And even now, I've had to kind of fill in the holes of things because my parents are very apprehensive to share, which is understandable. I don't know how anyone survives war and just can talk about it so openly, you know what I mean? So I often leave them alone about it because I think it takes a lot for them to be able to even tell me as much as what they have told me so far. And yeah, it's taken a lot. My parents have fought me about learning Yoruba. They're like, oh, you're an American, you don't need that useless language. But I'm like, but it is my language too. And I think there are like little ways in which try to I try to make space for my Nigerian lineage, despite my parents' constant battle with me, while also trying to be mindful of my Western privilege and how do I repurpose that sort of privilege for those who don't have it. I hope that answers your question, Mo.
Yeah, can I hop in? I think a lot about writing in the opposite direction. I think one of the, and so Itiola and I have talked about this many times over the years, because for a long time I was just thinking about cyclical time, right? And about like how we disrupt temporal systems. So time being nonlinear, but maybe cyclical, and figuring out like how that could possibly work. And part of how that manifests in my work is this notion that when I'm writing into the future, and writing into my own sort of like living legacy, my direct bloodline, that I'm writing back into the past, right? That by moving forward, I'm touching the back of my ancestry. So what I try to do is I try to take small pieces of my ancestry that I think like, you know, if it were like a prayer or an offering that my ancestors would be able to recognize, but wouldn't necessarily be like directly about them or directly about their spirit, their experiences. And so like, you know, in a poem, I'll write about like a mango, right? Or I'll write about like a particular body of water that I know like one of my grandparents bathed in or died in, but like not necessarily writing about their experience in that time. Yeah, I really love the notion of moving forward as a way to return backwards, which makes me think a lot of Sankofa, the symbol, which means go back to get it, go back to return. So yeah, I have that tattooed on my body because I think it has always been the way that I think about my own craft, that by like moving our lineage forward, we return back to the crux of our ancestry. So yeah, just that's kind of how I think about like movement and going back, all that.
That's so beautiful. I want to leave a little space if anyone else wants to jump in. But if not, we can take it right home. Patrycja, I agree completely. I feel like I could listen to this Zoom. I feel like I want to live in this Zoom right here. Thank you all so much. What a phenomenal, mind-blowing reading. Like, thank you all for bringing your full selves into this space. Of course, Itiola, thank you for bringing us together, for bringing us into this beautiful space, opening us up with such an invocation. So phenomenal. I've been thinking recently about how we're all each other's bonds. So lovely that, you know, you are like one of the most competent and graceful and wonderful people I know, and to have met so many other people who you feel are like that, having brought all these people into our orbit, it's always beautiful. So thank you all so much for hanging out. As always, we'll share the recording of today's reading on our archives as well as on YouTube. So it'll be available in just a day or two if you'd like to revisit this magical space. And please join us again tomorrow for It's Complicated, Race and Ethnicity in Latin American Art, a conversation with South and Central American artists Flavio Cerqueira, Karina Aguilera-Skavirska, and Adan Vallecillo, in conversation with Rail Editor-at-Large Dan Cameron. We just got off the tech test for that event, and the Zoom was like a house on fire, so definitely recommend tuning in. We'll conclude that event with a poetry reading by Selena Sue, and that will be, as always, at 1 p.m. Eastern, right here in the Zoom. Other than that, I'll, thank you all so much for coming, and I'll invite you to turn on your microphones if you'd like to say hello to one another, goodbye on your way out, or anything else that you feel compelled to share. But I hope you have a really beautiful day. This has been really special. And thank you all so much from our end.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Really amazing.
That was incredible.
Thank you so much. You guys, really appreciate it.
This is lovely.
Thank you,
Oh,
Patricia.
Thank you,
good.
IS. Thank you, Gaia.
Thank you, Gaia. Thank you so much.
You guys really know
Thank
how
you,
to hold a
Camonghne.
space and like teach a master class. It's like church.
I mean, they're all just geniuses. I just brought them all together.
You two are a genius, so let's start there. Thanks so much.
You are so humble about, and you should not be because you're so brilliant.
So great.
I'm gonna seize the 16 people who are still here and share a little thing I made, which is like these are all my notes I'm gonna take home. I feel like this is the skeleton of our afternoon we spent together. All right. Well, should we close for lunch, guys?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Guys, thank you, Gaia. Bye.